So if anyone is interested in the backgrounds of each and every one of them, go online, Google them. We're going to be dropping knowledge here and not just introductions. All right. With that, we're going to talk about something that is very close to my heart, which is investing in gaming and VCs in the metaverse and in the gaming space. I firmly believe that gaming is the Trojan horse that is finally going to give us blockchain adoption. I hope so. Right. But, you know, I was standing on stage in 2014 saying within 2 years, everyone's going to be on blockchain, and it's 2023 and we're still not there. With that, I'm an outspoken fan of what ICP is doing. And I really firmly believe in that notion that we could see through ICP an adoption of games and gaming in Web3. Just to start this off, and I'm going to start with you, Lomesh. What do you see as the overall landscape, and how has it changed when we talk about investment trends in this space?
Yeah, so I think if you think about it, we had some earlier fireside chat and panels, the sentiment, as you all see in Web3 gaming, has like pretty much tanked since last year, and that's a fact, right? But if you think about it this way, that it's like very similar to how lots of such events have happened before, the .com time around the 2000s and so on. This is a time where really smart people are building very cool stuff, and they are doing in a manner that like they're trying to be as innovative, as frugal as possible. And so this is really what is going to drive us back up to this. Lots of new interesting models people are envisioning. So the traditional was this VC funding, but now there is this crowdfunding, or we have this SNS, which we will kind of cover. But in general, I think I see that the future from here is going to be positive. There's only so much of a rock bottom that you can hit. The only way back is up.
Wow. All right. I love that. Brett, from your point of view, how has the investment landscapes changed from last year and now specifically to this year in gaming? Maybe you want to throw some AI in there.
Yeah, sure. We're a game specialty investment fund, invest globally. We've invested in 32 different companies, and we largely skipped over investing in Web3 games in the last 2 years. Our orientation is very much around the audience and trying to find a real player audience. In entertainment, from our perspective, it's the only thing that really matters. We invested in Polygon, so a core blockchain, which has become kind of a backbone for much of Web3 gaming.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've really moved from this hyper speculative, high liquidity world to one where now those people that are incorporating blockchain or Web3 elements into their game oftentimes even mute it. They don't even tell us in their pitch. But you're moving much more to an orientation of the real game maker, real craftspeople that know how to make great games, which are kind of driving it. When I think about blockchain overall, there just hasn't been growth in web gaming. And why is that? From my perspective, it's because there's just no distribution.
Right.
This idea that you would make a platform, or you would create a place which would be a destination for people to come for gaming, I think is a fallacy. I think what you want to build your business where people are. And distribution has been controlled by the top of the industry. In mobile, it's Google and it's Apple. Those two organizations both are opening themselves up now, and you've probably seen just recently, Google in particular, platforms which will allow for digital collectibles, which will allow for NFT to be incorporated into games. That's where you're going to get real participation. Out of the 10,000 games, legitimate, serious type games in the world, there's really only, I think, about 50 that matter every year. Everything else is hobbies or small by comparison. So you really have that shift. And so in the gaming VC investment world, I oftentimes hear people say that they think Web3 gaming shouldn't be vocalized. It's become kind of a bad word and almost uninvestable from a return perspective, simply because a lot of the capital that went into games in the last 2 or 3 years hasn't paid off.
Yeah.
If I ask anybody in the room to like name 5 really amazing, great games, you'll have a hard time doing it. There's a few which have started to get traction, but even by those standards, you'd say they're pretty small relative to the overall gaming market.
Interesting insights. When we say dry powder in the VC space, does that mean something to you? All right. Okay. Perfect. Dry powder, which is essentially the liquid capital that venture capitalists are ready to deploy as of today. What has happened over the couple of years, the last year particularly, is that VCs are sitting on more dry powder than ever in history. But they're not moving forward. Why is that, Brett? I mean, you played a role of a VC. Are you in a similar kind of mode, or are you actively out there?
VCs or investors in general, which were fortunate enough to raise capital a year ago or before, are sitting on a lot of dry powder. If you're in a cycle where you're raising money, I mean, we're in a fundamentally different world. Inflation and high interest rates, the era of free money is gone. And it's not just the fact that interest rates are high and your risk-free rate is at 5%. You have to have returns which are well north of that to justify any investment, let alone venture investment. But all the liquidity which is being pulled out. I mean, I've been talking to our LPs. Many of the deep-pocketed investors are like family offices. And I don't think any of them have allocation for venture today.
Right.
They had portfolios. If you had $1 billion family office, you probably had an allocation strategy that said you'd put 20% into alternatives, and the others would be in real estate and listed companies and so on. But
yeah,
the rest of their portfolio has collapsed. I mean, outside of a few listed companies, you see what's happened in the global stock market. That means if they were 20% allocated to alternatives or venture capital, and they now have 30 or 35, and it's going to take years for that to roll off. So the availability of capital now for venture is really quite thin, very difficult to raise new money. So what you're talking about are people that were fortunate enough to raise when money was free in a low inflation environment. And they're now very selective, and they're going to be very, very careful to make sure, because a lot of that money, I think, did go into speculative type of investments, particularly around Web3. I heard Dom earlier talking about, this kind of hype cycle, pump and dump, all these sort of Ponzi schemes, which people chased. They had great returns on paper for a few quarters or a year, and now it's collapsed. So, even some of the game funds that invested heavily in Web3 have had, massive losses if they went into that. So now they're trying to figure out exactly, what to do and how to direct that. But there still is, for great games with great orientation, large and clear audience, seasoned teams. Definitely is a lot of investment that will go into games. There is insatiable demand at the top of the industry for new content. Think about all the big platforms for distribution. I see someone here from Microsoft. You have Xbox, you have PlayStation on the console, you have PC or mobile. Almost all that gets venture created. Almost no new games ultimately come out of corporate settings. It's all going to be new teams, great game makers, which are going to be venture invested in.
Interesting. So that's giving us a little bit of the VC side. Kristen, you the CEO of Blocktrade, you work with direct consumers. Is that translating as trade volumes as well that have gone down, or what is your point of view on this?
Yeah, in general, I mean, I'm the CEO of Blocktrade, and we're focusing a lot on gamification and gaming these days. And I also built up a VC, so I also know this side a lot. Nice. And I just returned from Korea last week, where I spoke to a lot of gaming companies, and I also been to Japan 2 months ago. So I've digged in a lot into the Web3, but also into the Web3 gaming, but also now into the abstraction of Web3. So just as an,
and tell us about those travels. What are the insights from there, right?
Korea, Japan. It's very interesting because the bear market we are feeling here very strongly, I would say. Yeah. The sentiment is much more bullish still, yeah.
Right.
And I mean, despite terror happening and putting a deep mental hole into the Korean landscape, I saw a lot of bullishness. Yeah, and especially around gaming, I think the very interesting part there is that you see a lot of abstraction from blockchain, as you said. Yeah, as you mentioned. Yeah, people don't really want to have the Web3 aspect in front and talk about it very proactively. People are more like into like designing great games over a longer time horizon, yeah, rather than doing some quick games which have some obvious Web3 elements. Yeah, it's rather more they're more interested in like having like a great game and then later on like telling, okay, you can actually extract your NFT of these gaming items and stuff like that. But they're not interested that everyone has to do it. They're interested that 5 to 10% can or want to do it. Yeah, in the end. Yeah, and that's, I think, a general trend. But the other trend is that it's booming. Like in Japan, for example, at IBS Kyoto, half of the blockchain space was gaming. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Wow.
And in Korea, it was not so much different. So you see a lot of interest there, a lot of infrastructure being built. So, and that's exactly actually what I think also with the VC I also have is where I see like the general like infrastructure element of the blockchain more like playing out now also for the gaming scene, that it's more seen as an infrastructure in the end. That's also very interesting what we heard today about ICP and the possibilities there.
And I love it. And maybe, Brett, I want to play it to Lomesh for a second, because, you know, you said infrastructure, it's difficult not to go to DFINITY next. Lomesh, you're actively working with gaming companies in this space, developing the platform. I firmly believe that ICP is probably the only one out there that provides a real alternative to what is out there. Tell us more about the stuff you're doing in the gaming space.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the first things I would like to comment also on, as we were saying, like there's like, I mean, pretty much a lot of negativity or sentiment. Macroeconomic conditions are not in the favor. But like, I mean, say Warren Buffett once said, right? I mean, be greedy when there's blood on the streets.
Right.
So this is basically the state where we are in, but we need to be very optimistic. And the reason why I say we need to be extremely optimistic here is like we should like go back to the fundamentals at this point, right? So what really makes, let's say, Web3, crypto, blockchain gaming super like interesting is the thing that we need to like look at, right?
Right.
So,
and what is that?
And yeah, so the beauty is that like let's forget VC or anything like that. What crypto enables you to do is like I can literally pull money out of thin air and say these are my tokens, and I can incentivize the behavior of people by pulling this money that I pretty much like minted out of thin air. I said these are my 1 billion tokens. I want you to do X, I want you to do Y, and I'll give you 20 tokens each for that exercise. I want you to go to Twitter, tweet for me. I want to basically spend 20 minutes on my game, do that. So this like game theory that crypto economics is able to create is unparalleled.
Right.
Right. So I think that is what we need to figure out is like, yes, there was hyper speculation. Probably the projects which should have been valued $500,000 were being like speculated for $500 million, right?
Yeah.
So that happened, and yeah, now there's blood in the streets.
Right.
But I think the positivity that this entire crypto economics that basically brought to the table still remains. Now, coming to the infrastructure standpoint, one of the things that there were some recent pitches by the teams that were building on ICP like earlier today. But what some of these infrastructure is now enabling on ICP and maybe on other chains is like it's making super simple for people to come and build these games and do these experiments very quickly.
Right.
So if
there's particular developer tools in that context,
developer tools, just like basically somebody was showing this like one-click creation of like a Unity game and binding it on a canister, right? So just like single click. Now, in these kind of markets, such innovations always happen. There are two ways. One, you can start to spend like millions of dollars, try to build this AAA game, spend 3 years, raise lots of easy money. Or if you look at the App Store movement, right? When iPhone came in with the App Store, it said, it's like the long tail that I'm solving for. I made it so simple for anybody to solve for distribution, coming and building the games with these new Swift toolkits and whatnot. And you all of a sudden had like hundreds and thousands of games that were being created, and some of them surfaced to be the Candy Crushes of the world and so on and so forth. So I think this is the time where a lot of these people are building that infrastructure, which is making it super simple to make perform more experiments.
Right.
And I think this is the kind of thing that would basically help lots and lots of games to be created for very little money, thanks to AI. I mean, I was talking to a team here at Dragons, and they said, like, our kid is generating basically all of the like creatives that goes in the game through Midjourney, right? And
Crazy.
and so your fundamental cost of actually building something is shrinking. You don't need that kind of VC money maybe to basically do those small little experiments, and you have the crypto money from thin air to basically pull this off. So I think that's what the
I love it, and you're providing a great segue to back to Brett, right? Because we're talking about two absolute buzzwords, AI and blockchain or Web3, right? In prep, we were talking, and you mentioned, I find it very hard to invest in native AI companies, and you know what? I agree with you 100% because it's very difficult to pinpoint. Now, that intersection of Web3 and AI, do you see that being more investable?
I think that AI is going to be really transformational for everything in game making. We've invested in 33 companies, and 100% of them are leveraging AI.
Right.
We invested in a company called Cosmic Lounge. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's based up in Finland. The team, Cosmic Lounge, were kind of core developers for Candy Crush at King and also Best Fiends. But they have built a game engine which is readable and playable by AI. So they are able to do things which previously would take 2 months to build and test in a week.
Wow.
And in fact, they are able to have a game engine which can create a puzzle game, a new concept in the morning, and in the afternoon, they actually have a playable version. By the end of the week, they can actually have it in testing with real players. We have a team that had 10 artists, and today they're down to 3. They had 2 senior artists and 7 juniors that we're supporting. They're able to do more with better quality, faster with 3 now using AI technology. So that's really, that doesn't answer your question about the intersection with Web3. Web3 actually is, in my mind, is just not a gaming vertical at all.
Right.
It's a technology, and it brings benefits, but it has to be really driven by players. When you pull money out of thin air, you tend to find speculators.
Right.
And speculators are not the right community for long-term gameplay. You need players, people that love the community, want to play that. You can have an interesting community of speculators. Part of the stock market is just speculators, and people enjoy doing that, and that's a game itself. But to create something which is purely speculative and then somehow transform that community into a long-term gamer environment is almost impossible. There is it's oil and water oftentimes between like a player, a gamer population, and kind of the speculative community, which will be there to fund early on in that process. So when I think about what's the value of Web3, you'll see like from certain genre, certain types of games, it is really powerful. Think about like card collection games, and you can see like NFL Rivals is one of the games which has had the most traction. I think 2 million downloads, people doing it in the same way that when I was a kid, people would collect baseball cards or football cards.
Which are valued at billions right now.
And card collection games are a very interesting, powerful subgenre, and that's definitely, it's completely aligned with the structure of blockchain and blockchain gaming to be able to do that, create value. But it doesn't really apply to many other genre of games. It's easier to see the value from the developer perspective. In the world, and I don't know if everyone's familiar with IDFA, but basically the privacy rules which Apple and others in the EU have imposed makes it very, very difficult for a lot of the game developers to find their audience. Used to be, until just 2 or 3 years ago, you would be able to find and buy lookalike players in the market. You'd be able to find your ideal player, and you'd be able to go to Facebook or Apple or others and hone in. So you wouldn't have to shotgun look for like ads for everyone. You just find the people that have the profile that would like your game. Blockchain and certain platforms do reduce significantly the cost of user acquisition. The type of players that do play those games have, on average, around 25% longer playing time, and you can have longer, say, better retention, and lower user acquisition costs. So those are really valuable areas inside gaming that come from blockchain, but it doesn't really apply to everyone. And the harder aspect in my mind is distribution.
Right.
You got to put your game where players are, where people are all the time. And the number of people that are like seeking out all the different platforms around Web3 is just insignificant, almost immaterial compared to those big platforms where everyone goes all the time to acquire games. The app stores,
Right.
Steam.
And we haven't started seeing that ecosystem being developed.
Yeah.
here.
So I don't know the intersection. I'm sure there's an intersection between Web3 and AI, but AI is absolutely required for anybody. There's no game team that will succeed competitively without building AI. Web3, I think there's going to be probably a much smaller universe of successful games that really require it.
Right. Super. So we have I wanted to ask someone if they have a question, but we had a gentleman put up his hand, so please go ahead.
I don't need a microphone. So in the current climate where it's clear that venture capital is almost non-existent, is there any startup that's got a 12-month runway of development?
Sorry, I think it's not on my back.
I think you can hear me,
All right.
right?
Yeah, we could.
Is going to bleed cash to get to market. Stands to reason that businesses should monetize quickly. The fastest growing sector in gaming is gambling and casinos, and yet we haven't seen any pitches that include real money businesses. Why do you think that is?
We see quite a lot at Transcend Fund of real gaming, but because some of our LP base are largely game industry insiders, big strategic game companies, founders, but also family offices of some of the most successful game families in the world. And some of them simply are uninterested or by ethos won't do real money gambling. But we do see lots of interesting pitches. A lot of them coming out of Israel, where social casino as a genre of games, even overall, it's a very interesting and profitable niche. And places like, well, a lot of the states in the US for sure are, if they haven't already, are in the process of kind of making it easier to do gambling on things like sports. India, there's lots of places which have interesting space there, but it's not an area that we actively target, but there's lots of pitches out there.
Nice. Christian, over to you.
Yeah, may I reply to that as well? When we looked at what could be the most compelling niche for Blocktrade as an exchange to differentiate ourselves, we're specifically looking actually at which markets or other areas are growing exponentially, and we were actually looking a lot at our user data and on other data sets, and found out that actually, yeah, gaming, but we also found gambling, and we call it, or there's also something in between called skill gaming, yeah, where at least some skill is involved and it's not within the gambling requirements, is actually something where our users, where we have a big overlap between crypto and gaming / skill gaming, yeah, or gambling, yeah. There's a big overlap actually, because to be very honest, and that's what comes a bit with what Lomesh said, yeah, a lot of the people came to crypto because of the speculation, yeah, and stayed for other reasons maybe, yeah. But this mentality for coming to something because of speculation also very much adheres to anything around gambling, yeah. And that's why I think, I mean, there are already a lot of companies building already in this niche, yeah. So I think it's a very interesting market. And to also counter what you said, with my VC I see a lot of like young companies now focusing especially on showing very soon a revenue case, yeah. So I think this already has arrived with a lot of early stage companies and should have arrived, yeah.
Wonderful. So with that, I if it was up to me, I'd keep this going probably for the next half an hour. But we are all staying here and having an apéro. Having said that, as a parting question to the panelists, today we hardly have a handful of people in this entire space, let alone in gaming, right? Fast forward 5 years, where are we going to be, Brett?
So you mean it's the VC investment world, I see
As
it's
the overall landscape, as VC investment, as
So,
Web3 gaming.
in our focus area of just gaming, core gaming. I was going to say earlier, I've been called a crypto skeptic, but I'm purely agnostic. We just care about players and games and game development. We like blockchain for certain types of things. I didn't mention earlier UGC, user generated content. I think one of the pitches earlier was talking about that. That actually is a really valuable aspect of Web3. You can get people to be incentivized to create content for you, get off this kind of content treadmill. But thinking forward, I look at the gaming space as having unstoppable tailwinds.
Yes.
And that is driven principally by demographics. So you have, if you just look at, I take my parents and my daughter. My parents are the top of they're very healthy in their 80s, but they're boomers. And on average, they spend a couple of hours a week on their mobile device doing something of entertainment. My 14-year-old daughter is unfortunately well off the charts. She's the average for her generation is about 8 hours, so 4 times that of her grandparents. The overall size of the generation of Gen Z and post Gen Z is large and expanding, and their session times are longer and growing. And then on top of that, you have South Asia with 2 billion people. You have MENA with 500 million, all with increasing consumption and disposable income. So the content itself needs to be refreshed. There are games that have very long tail. Probably someone in the room still plays Pac-Man all the time. I love it. Bandai Namco is one of our investors.
Right.
But the fact is that some of that long tail stuff will be there because people have an emotional attachment to it. But people want new games.
I love it.
And so there's going to be demand for sure for games. The next 2 decades are guaranteed.
Great parting thought. Christian, over to you.
I think we will see a lot of these areas we talked about merging. Speaking about the AI, blockchain, gaming, a lot will be merged, and you won't be able to differentiate a lot of these sectors. There will be AI-generated games based on the blockchain where the user can take away their assets, but some are just coming to the game to play it and don't even realize that these components were there in building it or keeping it live and running. So I think this is very much coming, and this will also enable a much better accessibility of games, of blockchain, and all this interconnectedness. And that's what we want, actually, because we want to publish and host these games and connect crypto and digital assets even more with the end consumer who wants to instantly, for example, change an in-game item or token into Bitcoin or other stable coins or anything else. I think this is going to happen a lot.
Surprise, surprise, both VCs are positive on the space. Parting thoughts.
I think I absolutely agree. I think this, if you look at the trend, right? So anything that before it becomes a trend, like 2 years ago, if you were talking about AI, everybody would be like bearish, and they will be like, oh, AI has been tried for like 10 years and so on. If we were all bearish, like no startups would have made it, or no technology would have emerged. So like I said, I mean, I look for signals which are fundamentals, right? In this bear market, we have all of these people that are still trying to build this. They know that they will crack something. The more experiments that are happening, there is shrinking time to market to build these games thanks to AI and all of these other technology converging, as you were saying. And the fact that this infrastructure is becoming so, plus the session times of all the Gen Zs and so on increasing. Yeah, like, I mean, it has to grow. There is no other alternative in my mind. Yeah. So
Other parting thought, Brett?
Just one. Because there were a couple pitches around VR, and we didn't ask about or talk about it. I just throw it out there because this is an area which has a very long cycle time to build a game and to grow. But it actually, you can start to see it really turning the corner. I've only invested in 2 VR games. One is it's a company called Stress Level Zero. They make Boneworks, Bone Labs. It's been the most successful game of all time on Oculus. That also has user-generated content as one of the key drivers. There's a lot of special things around that team, but yeah, they've been hugely profitable. It's been our best performing investment out of our really amazing portfolio. A VR company has been generating dividends. We've already gotten like 6x back of our original investment. We've turned down a offer to sell our 14% stake. That's the only outside investor that would have returned $70 million on an initial $1.5 million check.
Nice.
So this VR is interesting. It takes some time. What Apple has done with this new technology, we just recently invested in an XR company where you can pass through. You can see, you can wear the VR device, but you can actually see in high resolution the room. A very interesting team coming out of Buenos Aires that's building something there. So I don't want the people in the room that are in VR to feel entirely left out. It is an interesting space. It will take some cycle time, but I think that, that's something that's also gone through a huge hype cycle. A lot of people, were crazy about it in 2017, 18.
Yeah.
And now then it went in a bit like the winter we're in Web3, but it's slowly coming back.
Wonderful. These gentlemen are all around. Join us for drinks. Thank you very much for listening. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you.